see, just trying to clean up my screen here. And I think we have all of our panelists here, which is great. Okay, we'll give it just a few more minutes. We should have plenty of time because I think it's just the 3 of you on our panel. And students, while we wait, if you want to, I'd love to know maybe who all's in the room. If you can add into the chat on Whova, maybe what year in school you're in and what your major is, just to let our panelists know. Thank you, Lisa. And for our panelists, if you're seeing CNAS coming in, CNAS is the College of Natural and Agricultural Sciences. Okay, so it seems like we've had, I welcome you to please keep adding your majors and years in school to our chat, students, but we will go ahead and start kicking. If we can, please use the chat in Whova rather than on Zoom so that it doesn't interrupt the screen. I meant to turn that off, but apparently it didn't save for me, so I apologize for that. Yes, just please stick to the Whova chat on the web portal. And so while we do that, we'll just dive right in with our first question. And I think maybe what we can do is, let's see, we'll pick, I have my pin our videos so that I know who folks are. So we have Elise, we have Jamie, and we have Sue. So I think we'll start in that order for the first question, if that's okay. So for our panelists, we'll start with you, Elise. If you can tell us a little bit about yourself, your school or organization, and what's the overall mission of your school?
Sure. So I'm Elise Freustad. I'm the Regional Director of Admissions for Trinity School of Medicine, and we're an international medical school with 3 campuses, 1 in the Caribbean and then 2 in the US. And we have a pre-med program and an MD program. And the mission of the school is really to educate and prepare for physicians to meet the needs in their community, both currently and in the future. So we don't just educate our students, but we really want to prepare them to be excellent physicians. That's it.
All right, thanks, Elise. I'll go next. My name is Jamie D. Trinidad, Regional Associate Director, and I'm part of AUC, American University of the Caribbean School of Medicine, for over 8 years now. So I've done lots of interviews with medical students and work very closely with the admissions committee. I also work with our partner school, or our sister school, Ross University School of Medicine. But the mission of American University of the Caribbean School of Medicine is training tomorrow's physicians whose service to their communities and their patients is really enhanced by international learning experiences. They focus on a diverse learning community and emphasize on social accountability and engagement as well. So we're really passionate about the communities of St. Martin, the communities where students come from, getting that global medical experience, bringing that back to their communities in the US or where they're from, being socially accountable and focus on diversity within the school itself. So yeah, I'm very excited to be here, and I welcome any and all questions.
Sue, I'm having trouble hearing you. Can anybody else hear Sue? Okay. I cannot hear you yet. No, if you may need to leave and come back, which is not a problem.
Is that working now?
Yes, it is.
It is. Okay, great.
Gotcha.
I just meant to change. Sorry. Well, thank you, everyone. Sorry for the hiccup starting. But I'm Sue Ross. I'm the Director of Enrollment Management for the University of Queensland Ochsner Clinical School. So this is a new type of innovative program where it's a partnership between two organizations. The University of Queensland is a big research powerhouse located in Brisbane, Australia. And then Ochsner is a clinical health facility that's the largest healthcare provider throughout the Gulf South. And it's a hybrid. So our students will spend 2 years in Queensland and then 2 years in New Orleans doing their clinical rotations. And our school is about excellence and innovation. And we are training tomorrow's physicians today, right, with a great match rate that we're very proud of. And we also look for students with a sense of adventure to join this program.
Wonderful. Thank you all for sharing a little bit about your schools. So if you can tell us a little bit now about the admissions requirements and what the various offerings that your program specifically has at your schools. So this time, maybe we can start with Jamie, and then we'll do Sue and then Elise.
Okay, so for AUC School of Medicine, if I didn't mention it before, we are strictly an MD program. So we don't have any other programs, though there is a conditional acceptance through our medical education readiness program, which is a whole other thing I won't get into right now. But essentially, we require a lot of the things, a lot of the same requirements if you are applying here in the United States. Our campus is on the island of St. Martin, so it's 2 years there and 2 years back in the US with eligible for licensure here anywhere in the States. So we really require a lot of the same things, which is your bachelor's degree and the prerequisites of biology, chemistry, OChem, physics. There's probably a little bit more flexibility that sometimes we can exchange courses for others. It just really depends on the student. And then in addition to that, we do require the MCAT, that is required. And we look at a lot of parts of the application. So because of our rolling admissions process, which we have incoming cohorts every January, May, and September, we look at each application individually. And we don't have specific cutoffs for GPAs because we look at the application holistically before we make the decision to move forward or not. Well, that's something I'm very excited about because it really is about that holistic review. Students coming in, we look at their transcript specifically and what type of grade trending they have, discuss with them their study habits and how they've evolved over the years. And that number on paper is not as important, as I'm sure many of our medical school panelists will explain today. It really is the journey to medicine and their reason that the committee is looking at. So I think that covers everything. It's just about the admissions requirements, correct? All right, perfect.
Okay, well, thank you. So we strictly have a 4-year MD program. But we do have the ability, you do have the ability to add 2 research degrees. There's either a Master's of Philosophy or a PhD, so PhD, MD. Our requirements are different. We actually have a free application and we do not require the same prerequisites. We only have 2 prerequisite courses, which is a cell biology and a systems physiology. We have a hard cutoff of an MCAT of 504 or greater, and we require a B average. What we base the majority of our decision upon is if you submit those to meet that criteria, then you're invited to a multiple mini interview. And that's where the bulk of our decision making goes. We have trained interviewers and the students will go through a process of 8 successive interviews. And mainly that's the bulk of what we base the decision on. And our academic year is different. It's January through November as well. Thank you.
Okay, so Trinity's admission process is very similar to AUC's. We do have 3 start times per year, January, May, and September. So also have rolling admissions, which means that you apply at any time. We don't have a deadline. We also look holistically at each applicant. I review every applicant that comes to me read almost every word of the application, and I'm looking for certainly trends in grades, looking at kind of specific classes, looking at experience, and also just kind of a indication that applicants know what they're getting into. Since med school is a long, difficult journey, I always like to ask about that to make sure people know what the journey entails. But we move pretty quickly with our admissions process. I can get an application, actually generally review it in a day, and if I feel like that applicant would be a good fit for Trinity, or at least from the early indications, I will reach out immediately and start working on scheduling the interview. And once the interview is done and I've got letters of recommendation, we send the file to our admissions committee, who then takes each application as a priority, and they make a decision generally in 2 to 5 days. So it can move quickly. And I like to let people know that, because it's very different from the US application cycle, which can take months and a lot of hurry up and waiting. And at Trinity, there's not a lot of hurry up and waiting. We really know that if people have been through the US cycle, there has been that anxiety and all of that. So we try to alleviate any of that and make the process a little easier. If people have applied US and have an MCAS application or an ACOMAS application, that can be uploaded, so you don't have to redo all of your coursework and personal statement and all of that. So we try to make it really easy. We do have an application fee, but if applicants get in touch with me, I can give an application fee waiver. And I do have to say, I love the interviews. I love meeting prospective students and hearing about their journeys. And I have so much respect for pre-med students, because I know that they have already worked really hard by the time they get to med school applications. So it's a great time to meet people. And we also don't have, we have a med and a pre-med program. I mentioned that early. Pre-med is for students generally who have a bachelor's degree, but might not have done so well in the sciences, so need to get a stronger science foundation. And what we do with that is have our faculty review the transcripts and then put together a study plan that they feel will best suit the student to make sure they're prepared for the rigors of the MD program. And then the MD, again, just kind of basic requirements of MCAT and a bachelor's degree. And we've got some data that shows that we can be successful with students with lower GPAs and MCAT. So don't be afraid if you don't feel like you're going to be competitive. Give it a shot and we'll see if we can help you be successful.
Thank you all for sharing. Oh, was there more? Okay. Well, thank you all for providing that insight to our students. Our next question is shifting a little bit. So I know, you talked about looking at each candidate holistically, and that interview process is being really important. So I'm wondering if you can share with our students what a really successful or strong applicant looks like for your program. And we will start, with Sue, and then we'll do Elise and then Jamie.
Okay, since we do have a hard cutoff on our MCAT, we certainly are looking for someone who does come with, the chops for passing exams and doing well. So in addition to that, talking about the bulk of our decision being based on how you perform with the multiple mini interview, we're looking for those qualities in someone that will exemplify the type of a person that would be a physician that's going to take care of one of your family members. So we don't ask for letters of recommendation. We don't ask for a personal statement or even a resume that you'd have to upload. So we get everything we need to know about you from how you perform on this interview. And I'll share with you the domains that we test and what we're looking, how you're going to perform on this interview. We're looking for your adaptability, Definitely want you to have good communication skills. This is very fast paced and you're gonna have to think on your feet and be able to deliver yourself in a poised manner. Critical thinking, super important for someone in the role of a physician. Empathy, integrity, teamwork, and your motivation to study medicine. So if you perform well on this interview, that's what we're going to be looking for, and these questions tease that out.
Okay, I look for similar things, but as I've indicated before, I look for, again, looking holistically at grades. I look at the specific scores on the MCAT. The CAR section tends to have good indication of success in medical school. But I think in the interview, because we get all of those, kind of tangible things in the application, I look for the kind of the intangibles. That's professionalism, similar to Sue. What I want you treating me or a family member. So are you professional? Do you have communication skills, leadership skills? So whether that's through an official role such as, president or VP or community outreach for a club, but just, or else just kind of general leadership. You tend to be the one that takes the lead on group projects or, active in class participation, that you're not afraid to kind of put yourself out there. Also, community service, the field of healthcare and as a physician is one of serving. And so I like to look for experiences serving others, and not just in a medical field, but in just different aspects of serving your community. So number of people have served at food banks or soup kitchens or foster care agencies, whatever, just, doing something that you're passionate about. I think that shows your personality. There are a lot of requirements for a pre-med, and I don't necessarily need the cookie cutter applicant, but somebody who really shows their personality and shows that they are a bit able to support other people and work well with other people. Trinity really is a supportive kind of family-like environment. We're a small school and people help each other. And so being willing to step up and help other people and not compete and have to be the best, certainly doing your best, but being part of a community, even at school, looking for those people. But again, character, integrity, personality, those kinds of things.
Yes, all of the above. I think, what makes a good doctor is a variety of things, right? It's not just being academically sound. It's not just being a caring person in your community. It's really a sort of well-roundedness. So certainly, when I'm interviewing and when the committee views our applicants, they look for those types of skill sets, right, to be well-rounded. So the different types of experiences that you can get throughout undergrad, and it doesn't have to be medically related. It doesn't even have to be community service. It can just be something that you're passionate about, a hobby, things like that. But what I really try to get across to students is that medical school is very challenging on an academic level. It's very difficult. Now, a number on a paper can say, like, you could probably handle this. A number on a paper might say to somebody, maybe you can't handle this. What I really love about our program is that we really, I'm taking it back to that holistic. And I really like to highlight this because I speak with a lot of students who have a certain GPA or a certain MCAT, and they just say, well, I'm not good enough. I won't be able to make it through med school. I've been here 8 years, and I can tell you with over 8,000 of our graduates, none of them had solid, stellar GPAs and MCATs coming in. Maybe some of them did. But we've actually done a pilot program where the last 3 years where we've taken a look at that MCAT score, broken it down, and sort of looking at the different subsections. And instead of focusing on that overall number, looking at kind of each of the different subsections. And through that pilot program, we did admit students that had a lower MCAT than maybe you would see typically. but those students are actually performing exactly the same as somebody coming in with a higher overall number. And it increased underrepresented medicine student population by 40%. So it was huge. And this was a big deal because everybody's journey to medicine is different. We all are not cookie cutter medical school applicants. We all don't have this great pathway. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's wonderful. If you have that, it's awesome. But there are some individuals that have more obstacles in life, come from different backgrounds, different, experiences, and your life experience that are obstacles also are looked at. That committee sees that and says, wow, you had to do all of this for your family and go to medical school and go to pre-med and then you still got experience. That all matters. The last thing I'll say is that make sure when you guys get to the point of you're going to interview, you're going to write that personal statement, take control and take accountability for the things that have happened. If you've taken a psych class, I believe it's the internal locus of control, you do not want to blame others for what has happened. Even though it might be the case, the committee wants to see students that take control, say, okay, this bad thing happened, here's what I did, here's how it made me a better person, here's what I learned from it. And I think you can apply that to a lot in life. It's really going to help you, and it's going to help you on your medical school applications as well. Thank you.
Awesome. That was super helpful to be able to share a little bit about what has really stood out to you all in the past and made strong candidates for your programs. And we have some wonderful questions coming into the chat, definitely about like matching and sort of post-program. So we will get to those, students, so please keep them coming. I am definitely tracking those. But before we get into those, we just have a couple of questions left about specifically like the response to the pandemic. So I'd love to hear from you all, and we can start with Elise again and kind of go that original order. How has the pandemic impacted your admissions process overall?
So I want to say really not at all. We have continued to admit students into all of our different cohorts. Our interview process has changed a little bit. I love doing in-person interviews, and actually have still been able to do a few of those depending on what what month we were in, if things were open or not. But I've continued to interview. We've continued to get applications. So none of that has changed at all. In terms of course delivery, we were able to transition very, very quickly to online and had some things already in place, had virtual anatomy in place. A lot of our communication, we were already recording lectures that students had access to, but our faculty stepped up and were able to learn the technology very quickly in order to deliver live lectures, and had to coordinate that over 4 time zones. So we tried to take into account the California time zones and even Hawaii, with courses being delivered in 4-hour ahead time zones. But also we were able to implement a course through Kaplan. And Kaplan has said we're the leader of diagnostic technology, because we were able to use one of their programs and platforms to help with diagnosis and treatment. And the students have said that was really helpful. And with the clinical skills exam going away, but with the Caribbean education organization still requiring an exam, we had that in place. And so our students, both for basic sciences and for clinical rotations, did not skip a beat. So our students in clinical sciences, I think they missed about 2 weeks in the hospital, but were able to use this format, so they didn't lose out. So they're still on track to graduate at the same time. So we're also able to provide opportunities in the community, because we have really close relationships with different providers, for our students to volunteer get clinical experience. So I feel like admissions wise and even educationally, we didn't really skip a beat at all. We did remain online for our basic sciences for the safety of the students, the faculty, the staff, and then the people on the island where we are, St. Vincent. We always want to be good guests on that island and take good care of the people that are there. And since they had a very low incident of COVID and the US had a much higher, we did not want to bring anything to them. So we remained online. So that was a difference, but the students have performed very well. They're missing the in-person thing like all of you, I'm sure, and everybody. But fortunately for us, COVID was not a huge obstacle aside from just being able to be in person. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'm next. For recruitment, it's definitely changed in that before it was flying all over the US and even to Australia. And that is all totally virtual now. I'll say what's the bright part about that is that I can attend, instead of being in one location and trying to make the most of that, I can be in multiple locations, even in one day, which is pretty incredible. So I am taking full advantage of that as much as I can. Some of you may know there's a conference going on right now, and I'm in a conference today and tomorrow, as well as here with you. So I really love that the capabilities of going virtual lend us to that. As far as classwork goes in the class, yes, we did a quick switch to online. Fortunately, our first year class last year was already in Australia. And what was probably unfortunate for them is that in November through January, they get to come home, and we kept them there because the borders were closed. So they didn't get to see their family. And they're still there. They're in their second year, and our first year class could not get in. So they're in class in Australia, but virtually from wherever they are in the US. So we did make that quick switch. We're hoping to actually get that first year there for semester 2. Fingers crossed.
Oh yes, the fun COVID questions. we probably can answer this one in our sleep, most likely. But yeah, similar things. Now, AUC did follow the U.S. Department of Education's recommendation to consider applicants who did not have an MCAT because inability to schedule the exam, sit in the exam, something along those lines. It was case by case, but we did accept some students without MCATs after review and after a holistic review of everything. That will go away if it hasn't gone away already. And we still will require the MCAT. But when it comes to the transition, I mean, we've already had all the online components ready to go. We're, some of the partner schools have that technology. We were already recording lectures, so that was an easy transition. Everybody be back in the US. But we started our on-site semester back in this January 2021. St. Martin did an excellent job of keeping, the cases were low. They had very stringent entrance requirements and students quarantined and all of that good stuff. And the lectures are not being held live in one big, one group of 100 students in a classroom, anything like that. So it's kind of a hybrid. So they're getting that clinical experience in the hospital sim center with social distancing and PPE, and then COVID tests being given. So they have a whole plan that they're doing down there, and so far things have been good. But nothing in terms of the admissions requirements has really changed.
Awesome, thank you. So our last pre-planned question for you all is the other burning question when it comes to the pandemic response. And that one is, for our students who have been prepping for a pre-med path or the medical school path and have not been able to get the clinical experience that was available prior to the pandemic and everything shutting down. Do you have any tips that you might give to them, or maybe some creative alternatives that other applicants have used that you all have seen and could share with our students? And for this one, maybe we can do We'll start with Sue and then Jamie and then Elise.
Okay, so thank you. So again, we're not going to be looking for the clinical experience. So I just say, if there is anyone out there it's really a good program for non-traditional students. It could be someone who was thinking they were going into medicine and then changed their mind, and maybe they don't have the prerequisites or the experience or the great GPA. I mean, we take 3.0 and they translate that to the Australian 7.0 scale. So we can't even really give you a number. I'd say just apply because it's a free, very easy application to fill out. But to give an answer to that question is that we have been recommending certain students ask for this kind of experience. And there's a number of virtual shadowing experiences that could be done. And we recommend that for someone who's wants to know more about the medical field and in our pipeline programs mainly. So, okay.
Yeah, this is a tough question too, right? We're all getting this question, and I know some of the educators at universities have been putting together lists of things for students to do, and I'm sure you guys at the UC Riverside have been given those things, but everybody's looking at the same thing, so it is very tough. This is a really great time for everybody to sort of take a step back and self-reflect on things that you've done in the past that are maybe not clinically related, because there's a lot of competencies that are looked at when applying to medical school, and you more than likely have touched on those competencies. So building that self-reflection skill set, this is a really good time for that. If you haven't been doing it already, the journaling, writing things down, think more informally about what you've done, research the medical schools themselves that you're interested in, and kind of get an idea for the kind of candidate they look for their mission statements and how you're in alignment with those statements, and then maybe planning some areas that you need to work on once things become more relaxed, and having a strategy so that you're ready to go when things are ready to go and you're not then trying to figure that out. So, and this is all going to be very helpful for you. The planning process and all of that's going to be very helpful for you as a medical student as you begin to plan your residency application. So keep that in mind, that the skill sets that you're learning now are going to be transferable to then. Networking, attending every virtual event. I know it's exhausting, and some of them are flops and some of them are great, but I tell you, like, meet as many people as you can, build your network. You never know where that could lead to, and be professional in the online world, because we all know that everything can be seen. And when you have a meeting with somebody, dress professionally, and you just never know what kind of impression you're going to make and how that's going to impact their want to help you. Wow, this person really just stood out, and everybody else is showing up in sweatshirts and they just knocked it out the park even though they're at home. Or just wear something professional. You don't have to wear a suit and tie, but maybe don't show up in a holy sweatshirt. So all of these things can be really considered as you take this time and as things are really slowed down, because the sooner you have a plan together, the easier it's going to be.
And I would agree with a lot of that. I mean, the good news, I guess, I hope for you, is that there aren't a lot of outside activities that you have to be involved in. So hopefully this time is an ability to, focus on school and focus on becoming the best med school candidate. And that a lot of it is just personal development. Like Jamie said, working on professionalism skills, working on kind of some self-reflection, areas where, identifying strengths and weaknesses, working on interviewing skills, being able to communicate who you are. But I do know that there are a number of virtual shadowing opportunities. If you Google online or do an internet search for online volunteer experiences, you can find those. And like Jamie said, those are going to develop and enhance some of your attributes that are already in play. And I think it shows that some resourcefulness and kind of ability to roll up your sleeves and get involved, even during a pandemic. So just be creative, but really, since you do have a little bit of downtime and aren't rushing around doing a whole bunch of clinical work, spend the time on your education, studying for MCAT. I can't tell you how many students I interview that say, oh, I didn't realize how important the MCAT was, or I didn't realize, that it was going to be so difficult or take so much time. So if you have that opportunity, if you're at that stage, take the time to study and appreciate that you're not having to do all of the extra, volunteering and even the time that it takes to drive or to get somewhere. If you just have to log on now, that gives you some extra time. So appreciate that and get outside and walk and just, I don't know, relax, enjoy yourself, get yourself in the best shape possible for the rigors of med school.
That's super helpful advice from everyone. So thank you all again for providing that insight. I'm sure that was super useful for our students, from the virtual shadowing opportunities that might exist to that self-care. That's a theme we've been seeing all morning, although I realize we are into the afternoon. So we have a couple questions that have come into the chat. And for these, I invite, panelists, if you would like to share, please do. And, not everyone needs to feel like you have to respond if someone answers it really well, but we don't have a specific order. So Lisa has submitted a couple questions. Thank you, Lisa. But what specific interpersonal skills are you looking for in your candidates? And maybe how would you suggest folks might improve in that area if they are wanting to improve?
So anyone just jump in? So the interpersonal skills that we're looking for are definitely the ones that I talked about for our MMI. And what I would definitely like to say is, it's not just our school that conducts MMI, multiple mini interviews. As I talk to prospective students, I find that they have been through this themselves for different reasons with different schools. And I would say to prepare. I don't know how much you can find online, but before you go into this, try to prepare as best you can, because you only get like a few minutes to read it and then just a few minutes to formulate this sensible, wonderful answer that is politically correct and well-adjusted and a win-win situation. And I've read some of the questions and they're difficult. You're in a tight spot, and how are you going to have to answer this and think on your feet to get that right answer? I think it's challenging. So as much as you can find out about a multiple mini interview, I'd suggest go online and research that and talk to anyone else that's been through it to get some real life experience, real firsthand experience of what's going on.
I think I've addressed a little bit some of the qualities, but I think when I look at candidates, I like to look at kind of the relational skills. Medicine, for the most part, is relational, whether with patients, with the rest of the treatment team. So being able to relate well to others, be a good teammate, I think is really helpful. And then I think self-awareness is really important. Kind of knowing your strengths and weaknesses, maybe not being so afraid that you've got some weaknesses and recognizing those as human, but being as human as possible. You've probably been to a doctor maybe who was very relatable and really took the time to listen and get to know you and empathize. And so I kind of, Sue mentioned earlier about, selecting candidates for physicians that I'd want to go see, or my family. And again, I think just relational skills, being able to relate to people across the whole spectrum of race, nationality, ethnicity, religion, all of that, socioeconomic, empathy, being able to put yourself in the shoes of others, because we want to develop, great physicians. And like Jamie said, not just academicians, but people who really can relate to other people. So relational skills, teamwork, empathy, and again, kind of, I think, integrity. If you want people to trust you, you've got to be trustworthy.
I don't have anything additional to add. You guys took all the words right out of my mouth. I mean, there's so many things that the committees are looking for, and those are really, I mean, they really ring true. I really like Elisa's comment on what I want to go, what I want to see myself as a physician. You know, what I go to me as a doctor, and I think if you can say that, then yeah, absolutely.
Definitely, there's that bedside manner that we always hear about, and that emotional intelligence is super important in the healthcare field. So appreciate that input. So Lisa had a second question about for students who don't match. Do the schools, do any of your programs have some sort of plan to help medical students match, or what? Just can you clarify that process for our students?
Yeah, if you guys don't mind, I'll take this one first, just because, um, you know, I saw the other question, and I think it ties into this a little bit about international med schools and matching. You really want to go to the school where you see yourself succeeding. There's a lot of schools out there that exist, and internationally and domestically too. You want to make sure that you go somewhere that you can see yourself succeeding and has the resources and support level that you need. There's a whole variety of them out there, and you just have to do your research. Now, when it comes to the AUC match rate, yeah, I put the link in the chat so you guys can have it, because I mean they do really well. We're really one of the top Caribbean schools. We've been around since 1978. Pretty much one of the oldest, if not the oldest. I mean, there's maybe one more that's like a couple months older than us, but you're going to see our graduates out there in the medical communities. And in fact, many students, well, that I'll interview with will say, well, I found out about AUC because my XYZ doctor is an AUC grad, and I had no idea. And so they do very well. You know, faculty actually come from US medical schools or other international schools where they taught for many years and have a lot of experience, but they get to dedicate their time to teaching. So you get really the best of both worlds. And the curriculum is comparable to that of a US school. So there's no difference in quality, faculty. The only difference is you're on an island, and honestly, that is not a bad deal. St. Martin is really one of the most tourist destinations in the Caribbean. So then you come back to the US, and you're actually doing clinical rotations that US medical students and other international students are doing. You're at hospitals like Kern Medical Center in California. So there's just not a major difference. You take all the same exams, the same USMLE exams. There's no additional testing. You don't do anything different. So the quality of the program is there. And that's why you'll see, the match rates, the attainment rates of last year was 92% first time. It's very comparable to some of the US schools and some of the DO programs. So it's not like, half the students are failing and not matching, and there's this whole big issue. But it comes down to the student, right? Because yes, students leave the program. Absolutely. They might not be the best fit for them. They might decide later, like their first semester, that they don't want to be a doctor because it's very hard. You have to know your why. So all the advice that Sue and Elise and I have been giving, please take it to heart. You have to know why you want to do this. With the students that don't match, it's a very small few, then AUC will work with them to figure out what happened. They have touch points with the team throughout the first 2 years, the 3 years, and 4 years with the residency advisors. So that hopefully will prevent that. But then they will meet with them. We have different programs they can get involved with so that they can not be just sitting around for a year, such as becoming clinical fellows or doing research on the island, things like that. And then we'll help prepare them for that second time around. It's really tough to match the second time around. It is more of like a 50% rate for anybody going into the match a second time around. So it's very challenging. You want to try to avoid that. but it's happened and students match. And we just had a guy who didn't match into ophthalmology his first time, and he just matched into ophthalmology this year. So it is absolutely possible.
And I would say too, in terms of what do we do with students that don't match, and we've got a really high match rate also. And we, I think every Caribbean med school calculates their match rate a little bit differently. And we calculate ours from who starts our very first semester and then who matches. We don't have any weed out points along the way. So our match rate is 87%. But again, that's, from every student who starts at Trinity and then who matches. And we have an on-site dean. I mentioned earlier that we have 2 campuses. So very much like a US medical school where there's campuses and then clinical deans. So our students stay together, go through clinical rotations together, study together for the years 3 and 4. And then the on-site dean starts working with the students, the clinical dean, years 3 and 4, very early, looking at, undergrad or their med school performance, their step exam. Now that step exam is going to be a little bit different when it goes past fail, but still considering that, and then talking with the students about their hopes and dreams. And then he makes recommendations of, things to do in the 3rd year, and then for elective rotations for 4th year. And then he has sat on a committee that reviewed residency applications, so knows what residency programs are looking for. So really helps the students craft their residency application. So in the event, and then we let students enter the match because we have those 3 start times. Not everybody has completed everything by the deadlines for the match. So we let students enter the match, and they may not have everything completed when they're interviewing and competing with US students, but we've had students match under those conditions. So we let them be the captain of their educational ship. But in the event that people don't match, the dean, Dr. Zubro, works with the students to help come up with a plan. I just have been in communication with a student who did not match first round, and she actually went to UCR undergrad. She got a research fellowship at a really prestigious program on the East Coast. And then she got a match outside of the original match in internal medicine. And now she is applying for fellowships in critical care medicine and pulmonary. So she's done really, really well. And right out of UCR. So we do have a plan. And then like Jamie said, we have people enter the match a 2nd time, and we've had students even enter a 3rd time and match. So as long as the student's willing to hang in and still has the passion, we are willing to do whatever it takes to get the student to their end goal.
Okay, well, to that, I'll only add that we do work with our students with the SOAP, right, the Supplemental Offer and Acceptance Program, and that we have success with that. We set an all-time high of a 97% match rate, so we're really thrilled about that. And our students always have the option of going back to Australia if they'd like. We have, you are able to practice medicine on both continents, so that's an option for you as well.
Sorry, finding that beautiful unmute button. So appreciate that insight again. I just feel like this has been super, super helpful. And I hope that that kind of answers Yannick's question too about, that kind of internal or international programs kind of being that challenge of getting matched. It sounds like, that challenge is still there, but it's not significantly different than a domestic program. So that's really reassuring to hear. So the next question that came in is from Elijah asking about taking the MCAT. So the question is, would taking the MCAT after senior year of college, maybe during a gap year or a second gap year, if that's something they're considering, is that all right? Even if that's not the normal quote unquote route to taking the MCAT. I'll open this up to anybody.
I'll have a brief answer because we're non-traditional, so anytime you want to take it, it's going to be fine with our schedule.
And I would say that too. And I know that the kind of the trend right now is to take a gap year. And personally, again, knowing what pre-meds have to do, I'm in total support of that. And I just say, take it when you're going to have the time to dedicate. I addressed this a little bit earlier. This is an important exam. It's not the end road. If you don't, get the score you had hoped for, there's always going to be a route for you. It might not be the route you anticipated, but you'll go to med school if you want to go to med school, but really take that exam seriously. So a gap year, 2 gap years, at least for Trinity, we're not on a timeline. We're on your timeline when you're ready to come. You need to be in the best kind of emotional space, geared up, ready to dig in. So I don't care when you take that MCAT exam. It just has to be within 4 years of when you're going to start med school.
Yeah, and just to add to that, absolutely agree. There is some strategy to it. You probably don't want to be out of the content for too long, like take a gap year and then take the MCAT. Maybe you want to consider, being in the material so you don't kind of lose that momentum. But in terms of when you can take it, like just as long as you're not kind of just like, I'm just going to take a year off and do nothing and then take the MCAT, that's not a really good decision, in my opinion. So if you're doing like some research or some clinical experience and then you're studying for the MCAT, or maybe you're just doing like a 3-month boot camp version of the MCAT prep and then you're going to take it and then you might do some more research or something, just don't stay stagnant, I think is the message I'm trying to get across.
Awesome. Well, I think we have about 5 minutes left, so I just wanted to take this opportunity once again to thank you all for joining us. And if you have sharing your insights, sharing perspectives on everything from applications to interviewing to the residency program and matching. So I do just want to extend a thank you to all of you because it is super helpful, and these are questions that so many of our students have. So appreciate you students as well for submitting questions. I think they were all very insightful and very helpful to your fellow students. Are there any other ones that anybody had before we close this session and go back to the main room? And Lisa's putting some information on how to join the other room, where we have some videos to share with you all, and then kind of transitioning to the second half of our health professions Info Day and Expo. Camille, did you have a question? Okay, no worries. Okay, well, with that, I think we'll kind of wrap it a little bit early, but again, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights this morning and this afternoon. We really, really appreciate everything that you had to share with our students. And so now we'll invite everybody. So if you see Lisa's comment, you can go back to the main room where we'll do some closing remarks and kind of wrap up like the formal expo part before we shift over to the fair and handshake. So to do that, you can, on the left-hand menu, you'll see agenda, and just click on that Health Professions Information Day main room.